If you've ever watched any of my videos, you'll know that I have an amazing and talented wife. What you may not know is that we met through her online comic many years ago. Now, this story is totally cringy, but for some reason I feel compelled to share it with you. So my apologies in advance, and hopefully you didn't think I was too much of a stalker. You see, I was planning to make my own webcomic with a friend of mine over 20 years ago. We were still undecided about what kind of comic we wanted to make. So my friend sent me a link to a quiz called Find Your Perfect Webcomic or something like that. Well, I took it and I was matched up with Real Life Comics by Greg Dean. Well, it sounded promising, so I began to read through it and slowly started to fall in love with the character and the cartoonist behind it all. And I would tell my friends, I'm gonna date them someday, to which my friends would reply, you don't even know them, which I didn't. Okay, speed forward to Valentine's Day evening. I didn't have a date, so I signed up for the Real Life Comics forums. You see, we didn't have social media yet, so we would join message boards to meet new people. Anyway, there was a post in there called Greg is cute. Well, this was right up my alley, so I went in and began chatting with folks. Eventually, the cartoonists made their way into the thread, and we all began chatting. To make this really long story shorter, the cartoonist and I went on a date, like I told my friends we would, and we fell in love instantly. For our first month anniversary, I thought it'd be cute to give them an action figure based on their comic. So I made my very first custom doll. Okay, it's really garbage because I hadn't really sewed anything before, and I didn't understand graphic design yet, and I even got some typos in it, like I put the wrong URL onto the box. Okay, fast forward past a marriage and the birth of our children. A little over 15 years into our relationship, my partner discovers the term gender dysphoria and realizes that she is transgender. I won't lie, it was difficult to cope with at first. Not because I didn't love and support her with everything in my being, but because I had imagined our life going a little differently. And now there was this entire new life ahead of us, and I didn't know how things would play out. And that worried me a lot. But we loved each other so much, and nothing was going to get in our way. Thankfully, I had the added benefit of discovering that I was bi or pansexual a few years prior, so I was already a little ahead of the game. So now Real Life Comics by Greg Dean is now Real Life Comics by May Dean. And I think it's time to remake that doll I made all those years ago. We'll be keeping the original doll the way he is because it's a beautiful memory of our past relationship. But we'll make him a counterpart that's reflective of our current love. Something else I wanted to mention is that I really wanted to get this up by Transgender Day of Remembrance, but I've been sick for the past 2 weeks. That and money has been a little tight in the Dean household. So I shamefully asked folks to tip me on my Ko-fi page to get the printing at the end done. And I'm so thankful they did, because after the events in Colorado, I felt the need to get this video up ASAP. So thank you all who donated. Okay, enough of that sentimental garbage. Let's get started. I started this project with a made-to-move Barbie because I wanted her to be flexible. More on that later. I know I probably should have purchased her secondhand, but I really wanted to repurpose the packaging. I'll put this aside and save it for later. However, after I took the face-up off of this face, I decided it wasn't right for this project, so I got another Barbie to steal her head. I won't be using this body in this project, so she'll go into my bin of bodies. Then, using my heat gun on low, I began to heat her neck to soften the plastic. Once her face was nice and squishy, I gently popped her head off her neck. Then began to cut off all of her hair. And for such a little doll, I was impressed with how much hair there was left over. Next, as I've seen many customizers do before, I stuck a screwdriver inside the scalp to pull her hair out. But it wasn't coming out as easily as other customizers make it look. So I tried heating up the head to see if softening the plastic might help. It did not. So then I tried soaking it in hot water with a bit of Dawn dish soap. This trick usually loosens glue. After letting it soak for a few hours and heating the water up occasionally, I tried it again. This time with a pair of tweezers to see if that would help grab the fibers. It did not help. Then I figured out the culprit. Mattel uses a ton of glue inside their heads. Also, how was there this much hair in this tiny head? It's okay. I'm simply going to move on to the easy part and remove her face up. Wait, what? No, I've seen this done 1,000 times before. Maybe I just need to add more and really scrub at it. Yeah, that's it. Just keep scrubbing. Just keep scrubbing. After scrubbing and soaking in 100% acetone for what felt like a decade, I finally started to make some progress. Now that we had a blank slate, I sprayed her with 3 coats of Mr. Super Clear Matte. Then I went in with a neutral tone watercolor pencil to start drawing out her basic eye shapes, and adding the first layer of her eye whites. I have been really enjoying using my Sennelier chalk pastels recently. I feel like they've been easier to mix the colors together. If you haven't seen my subdermal color zones tutorial yet, I'll link it below. It goes into more detail about why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. In a nutshell, I'm mixing my doll's base skin tone color with white, pink, and blue to create the same sort of tones that we see with our blank faces. The white mix goes on the forehead and down the nose. The pink mix goes on the cheeks, and the blue mix goes along the jawline. After I finish applying it, I lightly dust it with a brush to help blend the areas and spray it again with Mr. Super Clear. After that dries, I begin to add in the pink details of the eyes, like the waterline and the criminal caruncle. Then, using these tiny applicators, I begin to add color to the lips and around the eyes. As well as to some other places on the face. Then with my black pencil, I begin to add in the eyeliner and eyelash detail. And finish this layer with a bit of shading to the lips. Then spray it again with Mr. Super Clear to save my progress. Next, I draw in my irises and her upper eyelids. Okay, so I saw this filter on TikTok that you're supposed to use to help fill in your own eyebrows, but one follower suggested that I try it on dolls. So I did, and it totally works. So I marked the points and painted them on with chalk pastel at first. Then I drew on the individual hairs with different shades of brown watercolor pencil. Then added details to the lips. Then placed her pupils. Then I began to refine details and add in highlights. The comic version of May has light brown hair. I couldn't find any yarn at the store that was the perfect color, so I decided to buy 2 different colors of this super loose, chunky yarn and try to blend them together. I first pulled the yarn apart and then cut it into shorter rows. Then I gently pulled those strips at each end to give me even shorter lengths of hair. Then did the same with the goldenrod color. Next, I would grab a small handful of brown and a strip of gold and bundle them up. Then I would gently pull at each end of this bundle to pull the fibers apart. Then combine the 2 parts again and repeat this until the colors were fully blended. Next, I would flat iron the yarn to make the fibers smooth. Then I would trim the ends so the pieces all were roughly the same size. Then I would pull out a small section, wrap it around my finger, and slip the hair onto my rerouting tool. Then jam that thing into her skull. Then I spread Fabri-Tac inside the head to secure the hair in place.
24 hours later.
Once it was cured, I did another round of flat ironing. Then used my thinning shears, cutting shears, and an eyebrow razor to give the hair some shape. Now for a quick sidebar. I decided about halfway through the project that I could do better with the face up, so I wiped it and did it again. As I mentioned before, I banished her original body and brought back the made-to-move body. So I made the head squishy again and carefully plopped it onto the new neck. And I think the skin tone is a pretty good match. Comic May wears dark wash jeans, and it's been a running gag through the years that her characters almost always have their hands in their pockets because cartoonist May doesn't like to draw hands, so pockets are a necessity. But when I went shopping, I couldn't find any. Apparently modern Barbie doesn't wear pants. I did find these rainbow high cutoffs in my stash, but those sequins had to go. And again, I'm amazed at how many material pieces get used when making doll items. I mean, look at all those sequins. Now that that was done, I put them into a dye bath to make them darker. Comic May wears these cute brown thigh-high boots. Thankfully, I already had these cute Barbie shoes in my stash. So I began by spraying them with a couple coats of Mr. Super Clear Matte. Then airbrushed on some primer, and mixed together some acrylic airbrush paints to make that leather boot color. Once that was dry, I pulled out my pan pastels and began to add some shading details. Pretty much just making shadows where there should be some. Then using a watered down acrylic black paint, I colored the soles. Then, with my gold gilding paint, I painted the grommets on the front of the shoes. Then added additional color to the laces to make them stand out more. Finally, with a watercolor pencil, I drew in some stitching detail along all of the edges. Okay, before anyone calls me lazy for not making her shirt a separate cardigan and shirt, let me explain that I know what the real shirt she wears is like, so I'm simply just replicating that. To draft the pattern, I first wrapped her in cellophane and painter's tape. Then I marked the seam lines and cut them out. Next, I got a piece of paper and traced the tape pattern pieces. Then I freed the pattern pieces from their paper prison. Say that 5 times fast. On to the fabric selection. I had this small, rib-knit gray fabric in my stash, as well as this shiny white remnant that was left over from making Emily. Now, I've designed this pattern so that the top has like a faux shirt underneath the cardigan, just like May's actual shirt has. The collar of May's top has some small black lace lining it, so I found my stash of lace and cut the edge to make thinner pieces of lace. Then I notched around the neck and folded the seam allowance toward the inside. Next, I top stitched around the collar to hold the seam allowance and attach the lace at the same time. The next step was to fold over the seam allowance on the cardigan front and top stitch it down. I then took a strip of the white fabric and ironed it in half along the long side, then attached to the front of the shirt to make it look like a waistband. Then I attached the faux shirt, the cardigan back, and the cardigan front together at the shoulder. For the sleeve cuffs, I cut a small strip of the ribbed fabric against the grain to retain its stretchiness, and then attached it to the end of the sleeve. Then attached the whole sleeve to the body piece. Then I sewed the side of the garment from the wrist to the waist. Just like I did with the sleeves, I added a stretchy cuff to the cardigan bottom. Then I folded over and stitched the cardigan neck, and did the same along the back in order to prepare the opening for Velcro. Now, May's shirt also has these strips of fabric and buttons that look like they're holding the cardigan open. Because the pieces are tiny and this is a stretchy fabric, I opted for fabric glue. I simply folded over the frayed edges and sewed them to the garment along with the buttons. I also added some ruching to the front to mimic the actual shirt. Some of the hallmark character traits of May's character is that she loves Pepsi, she's a gamer, and she's often seen scrolling through her phone. So I thought it'd be appropriate to include those with the doll. And yes, I made May do some work on her own doll. It is what it is. I actually went shopping for some Barbie accessories, but the most I could find was a phone. So this is better. As you can see, I started by sanding and washing the pieces. Once they were dry, I sprayed them with primer. Then I pulled out my metallic paints and painted the base colors of the can and the phone. With a satin black paint, I did the base coat of the controller. Using my Stuart Semple mirror paint, I gave the non-painted areas of the can a metal finish. Then I painted the Pepsi logo on the front of the can. And added the finishing details to the controller. Since May's first doll had a box, I felt like this doll needed one too. Plus, it would give me an opportunity to make up for the mistakes of the first box. So I opened Adobe Illustrator and began designing. I already knew the dimensions since I was reusing the made-to-move Barbie packaging. I knew I wanted it to look as close to the Barbie packaging as I could, but give it the feeling of real-life comics. I even tried to replicate May's name to be as close to the Barbie logo as possible. Boy, I've come a long way as a graphic designer since that first box, right? Then I laid out the design for printing and sent it off to the printer. Oh, this is our new kitty Beckett. You'll probably see him around from time to time. So I got the prints back, and they looked great, but the printer cut off my bleed, and that's going to make some of this a little more complicated, but it's okay. We kicked Beckett off of the table and sprayed some matte board with Super 77 spray adhesive. Then we laid down the prints and burnished them down to make sure there were no bubbles. For the outer plastic, there was still some paper attached to the edges, so I used Goo Gone, which usually works, but for some reason it didn't work this time. So I tried soaking it in vinegar. But that didn't work either. I was trying to avoid acetone because I know it can fog up some translucent plastics. And it worked okay for the edges, but there were these 2 dots on the front of the box, and those fogged up quite a bit. Moving along, I cut out the paste-up pieces as close to the edge as possible. Then, using my scoring tool, I scored down the center fold to make folding this thick paper stock a little easier. Then I inserted my box front piece into the packaging and secured it with something called glue dots. To attach her to the backboard, I traced out the original box's elastic holder onto my box and cut it out. Then I wrapped a clear rubber band around her neck and around the notches in the backing. To secure her feet, I poked holes in the backing with an awl and fed the ends of the elastic through each hole with a small bobby pin, then locked the bobby pins together in the back. Then using those glue dots I mentioned earlier, I attached her accessories. Finally, I used tacky glue to close up the backboard and then attached the plastic front to the back. Here is the original doll. And now I'm proud to introduce you to the new Malin Dean. If you liked this project, please subscribe and turn on notifications. I'm a tiny creator, so every subscription, bell ringing, like, share, and comment really helps my channel grow and keeps me excited to continue sharing my process with you all. Plus, I really love commenting with you all afterwards. My hope is that we can create a community together made of dolls like you and me. So please feel free to start conversations. I'm truly thankful for each and every one of you. Now, here is her before, and here is her after. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you had a sweet time.